Have you ever sat down to start something important? Maybe writing that book, launching that business, or finally creating that art you've been dreaming about, only to find yourself, 2 hours later, reorganizing your desk drawer or scrolling mindlessly through social media? If so, you've met the enemy. And according to Pressfield in The War of Art, this enemy has a name: resistance. But here's what makes this enemy so dangerous. It's invisible. You can't see it, you can't touch it, and most people don't even know it exists. Yet it's destroying dreams every single day. Pressfield describes resistance as a universal force, as real and consistent as gravity. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're a beginner or a seasoned professional. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, young or old. Resistance comes for everyone who tries to move from a lower state to a higher one, from who we are to who we want to become. Think about that for a moment. Every time you try to level up in life, there's an opposing force pushing back. And the more important the project is to your soul's evolution, the stronger that force becomes. So what exactly is resistance? It's that voice in your head that says, "I'll start tomorrow." It's the sudden urge to clean your entire house when you sit down to write. It's the mystery illness that appears the day before your big presentation. It's the fight you pick with your spouse right when you're about to start your creative work. Resistance is a shapeshifter. It takes many forms, and that's precisely what makes it so hard to fight. Sometimes it shows up as fear of failure, fear of success, fear of looking foolish. Other times it disguises itself as something helpful: perfectionism, research, preparation. I'm not procrastinating, we tell ourselves. I'm just making sure everything is perfect before I begin. But here's the truth bomb Pressfield drops. Resistance is always lying. Every word it speaks is a lie designed to keep you from doing your work. It tells you you're not talented enough, not ready, not experienced enough. It whispers that your idea isn't original, that someone else has already done it better, that you'll probably fail anyway, so why bother trying? And the most insidious thing about resistance, it feels completely rational. It doesn't announce itself as the enemy. Instead, it masquerades as our own thoughts, our own voice, our own logic. This is why most people lose to it without ever knowing they were in a battle. Pressfield makes a crucial observation. Resistance is always strongest at the finish line. Just when you're about to complete something important, about to ship that project, about to publish that book, that's when resistance unleashes its most powerful weapons. It will make you second-guess everything. It will convince you that what you've created is worthless. It will find 1,000 reasons why you should start over or give up entirely. But here's the key insight that changes everything. The very existence of resistance is proof that your work matters. Pressfield says if you're feeling resistance, that's your compass. The more resistance you feel towards something, the more important that thing is to your growth and evolution. Would you feel resistance about watching TV all day? No. Would you feel it about scrolling social media for hours? Absolutely not. But sitting down to write your novel? Starting that business? Having that difficult but necessary conversation? Maximum resistance. This means we can use resistance as a guide. When you feel it showing up, when you feel the fear, the procrastination, the self-doubt, that's not a stop sign. It's actually a signal that you're on the right path. You're doing something that matters, pushing toward your higher self. The tragedy is that most people obey resistance their entire lives. They mistake its voice for wisdom, its fear for prudence, its procrastination for patience. They go to their graves with their gifts undelivered, their songs unsung, their books unwritten. But it doesn't have to be this way. The first step in winning this war is simply recognizing that resistance exists. Name it. See it for what it is. Not your authentic voice, not reality, not wisdom, but the enemy of everything you know. In the coming chapters, we'll explore exactly how to fight this enemy and win. But for now, just remember this. If you're feeling resistance right now towards something in your life, congratulations. It means you found something worth fighting for. The war is real. The enemy is invisible. But now that you can see it, you can fight it. And that changes everything. Welcome back to our deep dive into Pressfield's The War of Art. In Chapter 1, we met the enemy, resistance with a capital R. Now in Chapter 2, we're going to expose its weapons. Because resistance doesn't fight fair. It's a master tactician that knows your weaknesses better than you know them yourself. Let's start with its most common weapon, procrastination. Pressfield doesn't sugarcoat this one. Procrastination isn't just poor time management. It's resistance's most insidious tool. When you say, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'll write that novel after I finish this season," that's not you talking. That's resistance. And here's the kicker. Procrastination feels so reasonable. I'm just not ready yet. I need to do more research. I need the perfect conditions. But Pressfield warns us, the most pernicious aspect of procrastination is that it becomes a habit. It becomes who you are. You stop being the person who creates and become the person who intends to create someday. Next, let's talk about self-doubt. This is where resistance gets personal. It whispers, "Who are you to write this book? Who are you to start this business? There are people more talented, more experienced, more deserving." Pressfield identifies this as one of resistance's most powerful weapons, because self-doubt doesn't just stop us. It makes us accomplices in our own defeat. We internalize the voice of resistance until we can't tell it apart from our own thoughts. The cruel irony, Pressfield notes that self-doubt is often strongest in those with the most potential. If you're feeling it, that might actually mean you're onto something. Then there's rationalization. Resistance is intellectual disguise. This is when we create elaborate, logical-sounding reasons for not doing the work. I'm waiting for inspiration. This isn't the right time in my life. I need to focus on more practical matters first. Pressfield exposes these as lies wrapped in reasonable packaging. Rationalization is resistance in a suit and tie, presenting a PowerPoint on why your dreams should wait. And the more intelligent you are, the more convincing your rationalization is. You can outthink yourself right into paralysis. Fear is perhaps resistance's nuclear option. Not just any fear. Pressfield talks about the fear of success, fear of failure, fear of being seen, fear of ridicule. What's fascinating is that fear of success can be just as paralyzing as fear of failure. Because success means change. It means stepping into a new identity. It means you can no longer hide behind what if. Pressfield argues that fear is good. It's a compass pointing toward what we most need to do. The things that scare us the most are usually the things we most need to face. Resistance knows this, so it amplifies that fear until it becomes overwhelming. And finally, there's self-medication and self-distraction. This is resistance in its most desperate form. When we're on the verge of doing our real work, resistance offers us anything else. Alcohol, drugs, sex, shopping, social media, television, gossip, anything to numb the call of our authentic work. Pressfield isn't being puritanical here. He's pointing out how these things become weapons against ourselves when we use them to avoid our calling. Every time you reach for your phone instead of your keyboard, every time you binge another series instead of working on your project, that's resistance offering you a comfortable escape. Here's what makes resistance so dangerous. It never fights on just one front. It combines these weapons. You procrastinate because of self-doubt. You rationalize because of fear. You self-medicate because the combination of all these forces becomes unbearable. Pressfield wants us to see that resistance is a system, a coordinated attack on your creative soul. But, and this is crucial, recognizing these weapons is the first step to defending against them. When you can name the tactic, you can fight it. When you see procrastination for what it is, it loses some of its power. When you recognize the voice of self-doubt as resistance rather than truth, you can start to ignore it. When you spot your own rationalization, you can call yourself out. Pressfield's message is clear. Resistance will use every trick, every weakness, every vulnerability against you. It will shapeshift and disguise itself. It will feel like common sense, like self-protection, like wisdom. But it's none of those things. It's the force that wants to keep you small, safe, and uncontrolled. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to recognize resistance in its many forms and begin building our defense. Because now that we know its weapons, we can start to forge our own. The war isn't over, it's just beginning. See you in
Chapter 3, Turning Point, The Warrior's Mindset. Imagine two people with the same dream, same talent, same opportunities. One makes it, one doesn't. What's the difference? Stephen Pressfield gives us the answer in one devastating word: professionalism. In the war of art, Pressfield doesn't just tell us to work harder or believe in ourselves more. He draws a line in the sand. On one side, the amateur; on the other, the professional. And here's the truth that might sting a little. Most of us have been living as amateurs our entire lives. But what does that actually mean? The amateur plays part-time. The professional shows up every day. The amateur waits for inspiration. The professional works whether inspired or not. The amateur lets his emotions dictate his schedule. The professional acts in the face of fear, doubt, and uncertainty. Pressfield himself lived as an amateur for years. Decades, actually. He worked odd jobs, drifted from place to place, and dreamed of being a writer. But he didn't write. Not professionally. Then one day, at rock bottom, sleeping in his car, he made a decision. He turned pro. What changed? Not his talent, not his circumstances, his mindset. The professional understands something the amateur doesn't. Resistance will never go away. You don't defeat resistance by eliminating it. You defeat it by showing up anyway, every single day, rain or shine, inspired or uninspired. Feeling it or not feeling it, this is the warrior's mindset. A warrior doesn't go into battle only when he feels like it. He doesn't check his emotions before taking his post. He understands that fear is part of the equation, that doubt is a constant companion, that the enemy never takes a day off. So neither does he. The professional writer writes every day. The professional painter paints every day. The professional entrepreneur works on the business every day, not because they've transcended resistance, but because they've accepted its existence and refused to let it win. Here's where it gets interesting. The moment you turn pro, everything changes. Pressfield describes it as crossing a threshold. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop identifying with your fears and doubts. Instead, you identify with your commitment. The amateur says, "I'll write when I have time." The professional makes time. The amateur says, "I'm not good enough yet." The professional says, "I'll get better by doing the work." The amateur is terrified of judgment. The professional accepts that judgment is inevitable and irrelevant to the work itself. But turning pro isn't just about discipline, it's about self-respect. When you show up for your work like a professional, you're telling yourself something profound. My dreams matter. My calling matters. I matter. The amateur seeks validation from others. The professional validates himself through his commitment to the work. He doesn't need applause to keep going. He doesn't need permission to start. He gives himself the one thing resistance can never take away: his own dedication. Pressfield makes a critical distinction. Turning pro is free. It doesn't require talent, money, connections, or luck. It requires a decision, a single moment when you draw that line and step across it. On one side, you're someone with a dream. On the other, you're someone doing it. The professional also understands something crucial about fear. It's not a stop sign. It's a compass. Pressfield writes that the more afraid we are of something, the more certain we can be that we need to do it. Fear tells us what matters. The professional runs toward fear, not away from it. This is why the professional mindset defeats resistance permanently. Not because resistance disappears, but because it becomes irrelevant. When you commit to showing up regardless of how you feel, resistance loses its power. It can scream all at once. You're doing the work anyway. So here's the question that changes everything. Are you ready to turn pro? Not someday. Not when you're more prepared. Not when circumstances improve. Now, today, this moment. Because the beautiful truth is this: you already have everything you need. The only thing standing between you and the life you meant to live is a decision. The decision to cross that threshold. To stop playing at your dreams and start working them. To adopt the warrior's mindset and show up every day, ready for battle. Resistance is waiting. It always is. But now you notice it. The professional shows up anyway. And in that daily act of showing up, in that commitment to the work, regardless of feelings or circumstances, you don't just defeat resistance. You become who you were always meant to be.
Chapter 4: The Daily Battle, Practical Warfare Strategies. Stephen Pressfield doesn't mince words. If you're serious about your creative work, you need to treat it like a professional, not an amateur. And the difference between the two isn't talent, it's showing up. The amateur waits for inspiration. The professional knows that inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. This isn't poetic, it's not romantic, it's warfare. So how do we win this daily battle against resistance? Let's talk tactics. First, establish your sacred working hours. Pressfield writes every morning without exception. For him, it's the same time, the same place, every single day. This isn't about convenience. It's about creating a ritual that signals to your brain. This is when we work. This is when we fight. Resistance hates consistency because consistency is its natural predator. When you show up at the same time every day, you remove the decision-making. You remove the negotiation. There's no should I work today. There's only it's 8 a.m. Time to go to war. Your working hours become non-negotiable territory. You wouldn't skip a surgery you're scheduled to perform, would you? You wouldn't miss a court date if you were a lawyer. Treat your creative time with the same deadly seriousness. Because it is life or death. It's the death of your potential versus the life of your authentic self. Second, create a pre-work ritual. Pressfield's ritual is simple. He does some stretches, makes some coffee, says a prayer to the muse. The specific actions don't matter. What matters is the consistency. Your brain starts to associate these actions with the work that follows. You're building a neural pathway that says, when I do this, work happens. Maybe your ritual is making tea. Maybe it's a specific playlist. Maybe it's lighting a candle or reading a poem. The ritual is your armor. It protects you from the chaos of the world and creates a sacred space where only the work exists. Third, commit to showing up even when the work is terrible. Especially when the work is terrible. Pressfield says he's written plenty of garbage. We all have. But here's the secret. You can't write a good page until you've written a bad one. And you can't edit a blank page. Resistance wants you to believe that if you can't do it perfectly, you shouldn't do it at all. This is a lie designed to keep you paralyzed. The professional knows that most of what they create is mediocre. And they create it anyway. Because buried in that mediocrity is the occasional gem. You can't find the gem without digging through the dirt. Fourth, eliminate escape routes. The professional doesn't have a plan B. Not because they're reckless, but because plan B is where resistance lives. When you give yourself an escape route, you're telling yourself that this work isn't really that important. That you don't really have to win this battle. Burn the ships, remove the safety, tell people about your work, set deadlines, create accountability, make it harder to quit than to continue. Fifth, track your battles. Keep a simple log of your working hours. Not what you accomplished. Just, did you show up? Did you fight? Pressfield doesn't measure his work by pages written or quality achieved. He measures it by one question. Did I do my work today? This removes the subjective chaos of was it good enough and replaces it with the objective clarity of did I show up? Over time, this log becomes proof. Proof that you're winning. Proof that you're a professional. Proof that resistance doesn't own you. And finally, understand that this is a daily battle, not a one-time war. You don't defeat resistance once and retire victorious. You face it every single morning. Even Pressfield, after decades of professional work, still feels resistance. Fear never goes away, doubt never disappears. But he shows up anyway. That's the difference. The professional feels the fear and sits down to work. The amateur feels the fear and goes back to bed. Every day you're making a choice. Will you let resistance win, or will you suit up and fight? The battle is daily. The stakes are eternal. Your authentic life is on the other side of this war. So wake up tomorrow, perform your ritual, and sit down to work. Show up like your life depends on it. Because it does.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Steven Pressfield's The War of Art. We've journeyed through the darkness of resistance, learned to identify its many faces, and armed ourselves with the tools to fight back. But here's the question that matters most. What happens when you actually win? What lies beyond the war? Pressfield doesn't just offer us a survival guide. He presents a vision of transformation so profound that it reshapes everything about who you are. This isn't about finishing a project. This is about becoming someone entirely new. Think about the person you were when you first encountered resistance. Maybe you were the aspiring novelist who talked about writing but never wrote, the painter with pristine brushes, the entrepreneur with a drawer full of business plans. You had dreams, sure, but they existed in some distant future. Always tomorrow, always when conditions were perfect. That person is gone, not defeated, transcended. When you show up every day and do the work despite resistance, something alchemical happens. You're not just producing work, you're forging a new identity. You become, as Pressfield says, a professional. And the professional operates from a completely different reality than the amateur. The amateur works when inspired. The professional works regardless. The amateur lets fear drive decisions. The professional acknowledges fear and works anyway. The amateur seeks validation. The professional validates through the work itself. Do you see what's happening here? Each victory over resistance isn't just a check mark on a to-do list. It's a vote for a new version of yourself. Pressfield introduces a concept that changes everything. When you turn pro, you invoke what he calls the muse, or higher powers. Now, whether you interpret this literally or metaphorically, doesn't matter. What matters is this truth. When you demonstrate through consistent action that you're serious, reality responds. Opportunities appear. Coincidences multiply. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. But here's what nobody tells you about this transformation. It's irreversible. Once you've tasted what it means to truly honor your calling, you can't go back to sleep. Sure, you'll face resistance again, probably tomorrow, definitely next week, but you'll face it as a warrior who's won battles, not as a civilian hoping to avoid conflict. Your relationship with the work becomes sacred. This is where Pressfield gets mystical, and rightfully so. He suggests that we each have a destiny, a unique contribution only we can make. Resistance exists not to torture us randomly, but specifically because we have something important to create. The magnitude of resistance is directly proportional to the importance of your calling. That novel you're terrified to write, that business you're afraid to start, the very terror you feel is a compass pointing toward your destiny. Beyond the war lies a creative life, characterized by flow rather than force. Yes, you still work hard, probably harder than ever, but it's different now. You're no longer pushing against resistance, you're being pulled by purpose. Your studio, your desk, your workspace becomes a temple. The hours you spend creating become the most real hours of your day. Everything else, that's just the intermission. And here's the beautiful paradox. As you commit fully to your individual calling, you become more connected to others, not less. By doing your unique work, you give others permission to do theirs. Your victory over resistance creates ripples that touch lives you'll never know about. Every time you sit down and do the work, you're not just serving yourself, you're serving the collective evolution of human creativity. Pressfield leaves us with a final, crucial insight. This new creative life requires eternal vigilance. There is no retirement from the war with resistance. But that's not depressing. It's empowering. Every single day you get to choose who you are. Every morning presents a new opportunity to turn pro, to honor your calling, to vote for your highest self. So who are you beyond the war? You're someone who knows their purpose and pursues it relentlessly. You're someone who's tasted the divine through creative work. You're a professional, a warrior, an artist, in the truest sense. Not because you've achieved fame or fortune, but because you've achieved something far more valuable. You become who you're meant to be. The war of art isn't really about fighting resistance. It's about claiming your birthright as a creator. It's about stepping into the life that's been waiting for you all along. The war continues, yes, but now you know how to win. And with each victory, you're not just creating work, you're creating yourself. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Pressfield's masterpiece. Now close this video and go do your work.